Welcome to the Perfectly Flawed podcast, where we share conversations with amazing people who have achieved extraordinary success through embracing their struggles and imperfections. Often they have succeeded not just despite their perceived flaws, but because of them too. Please do subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone else who you think might be interested. On today's episode, we speak to Shelley Bridgman about what it was like to change gender 40 years ago and also the impact of that on her life currently with all the new changes through the Trump administration. And also, more importantly, how she's so much more than her gender and how we all are. Very warm welcome to you, Shelley. It's such a treat to have you here. And the reason why I've invited you here today is because you are a person of great wisdom, I would say, and insight on the human condition. And this is, after all, about the art of being human.
And I am perfectly flawed.
And you're perfectly flawed. You're perfectly flawed. And you're a really great. And you also kind of have this really interesting mix of being insightful, but also having a lot of levity and very dry wit, is what I found.
Yeah, dry wit. I've had that accusation thrown at me before, and it's perfectly true.
Yeah, you definitely are. I mean, half the time people don't even know that you're joking. I think quite often
it gets described as being British when you're abroad.
Is it?
Because we have a kind of thing in America, particularly, that we have a dry sense of humour. So I give in. I own it.
Well, that's good. You give in to being British and having that kind of...
give in to being British. Yeah.
Well, so we've got that going on, but you've also done some incredible work with young people around identity and understanding who they are, and also around making a change in the law, something that you took to the European Courts of Justice.
I did.
Which is phenomenal. So, I mean, I think overall, I think that there's so much for you and I to discuss around being perfectly flawed, accepting flaws, and really the fact that what is the art of being human and who are we kind of under the surface?
Yeah, it just sprung to mind, really. Quotes are cliches, aren't they? But I think, was it Mark Twain who said the two most important things that ever happened to you was the day you're born and the day you know why. and I think there's a lot of truth in that. It took me a great many years to sort of appreciate it, but I think most of us in life, and certainly I can own it, spend a great deal of energy trying to be either acceptable or bending to fit something we think we should be. And we only really come into our own when we just forget all of that and we just be our authentic selves. I know authenticity is another. I try and avoid cliches, okay?
Yeah.
But there is something about that because it's easier. You know, we find a way of fitting in with the world, and we start very young. And some people go through life and never challenge that. Some people go through life and they fit straight in. But in my experience, most of us trying to avoid some kind of pain. So we'll do whatever it takes so that we're okay.
Right. So we shape ourselves in order to avoid pain.
Yeah.
So you in thinking about Mark Twain and saying, you know, that time
I may be wrong on that, but I think it was him who said that.
All right.
You're going to get a flood of emails and texts now from people saying, tell us silly, what's it? It was actually...
Well, I hope so, because that would imply there'll be a flood of people listening. So hello to all you people. I hope you got that wrong, Shelley. But whoever it was who said it, the day you know why, what was the day that you knew why?
I think in a way it sort of evolves, and it still is to a degree, but... Probably only a few years ago when I realised that what I'm good at doing is empowering people to really connect with who they are and their purpose. And that's been a long process for me. I went through all sorts of different careers and things, and it's all led me to that point. So I suppose the first thing I would do would be to encourage people who feel stuck or they're not what they want to be is none of it's been wasted.
Well, I think, of course, there's you've been on a huge change in terms of changing your gender. That was a big one, and you took. Tell us about taking that to the whole kind of court process.
Well, it was a bit, I mean,
because it's kind of rearing its head again now in the year of Trump.
It's a bit of a long story, really, but I don't think there's a topic on the planet that has so much garbage spoken about it or so much information as gender identity.
Right.
I mean, and the world's full of it right now. You know, from the President of the United States to our own politicians. And
so, I'd love to know what that garbage is. You know.
Well, I mean, there's so much. I mean, we could be here forever talking about it, but you know, I hear.
So, what's true then? Maybe
I hear expressions like lifestyle choice.
Right.
And you know, nobody chooses. To to put themselves outside of society just because it might be fun. You know.
I'll choose to be ostracised. I'll choose to be.
I mean, it's about for me. It's always just been about who I feel I am, and I have to let go of what other people's expectations of me are.
Has that taken a long time too?
Well, for me, I mean, I've never known any difference in terms of how I felt. I didn't suddenly come to this decision at some point and think, oh, you know, that sounds like fun. I think I'll look a bit different, start wearing makeup, and I'll live. You know, I had a female identity from as long as I can remember.
But what about the acceptance? Because I guess that's one. You know, it's one thing to have a female identity.
Well, I thought that for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, I went through childhood, went through adolescence. I got married, had 2 children, and then I just couldn't do it anymore.
As the other gender.
And in my 30s, I had a breakdown and had to do something.
Right.
Yeah.
And
it was my partner, actually. God bless her. You know, I took an overdose, and she said to me, well, if it's that bad, you better do something about it. You know?
Wow. Yeah.
So I did.
And was she quite, was she very supportive during that time? It must have been very difficult for her as well.
Yeah, well, we're still together.
Yeah.
But it's a clearly totally renegotiated relationship. And yes, extremely. I mean, in some ways, I think it was her who described it as being me in the eye of the hurricane, she being outside of it, getting the
flak flying off.
Yeah. And there's a lot of truth in that.
Yeah.
Because I was at least making some choices about what I did and how I did it and when.
You're a little bit more in control, perhaps.
For everyone else around me, it was there, you know, they just had to deal with it. And I had 2 young children. I lost a business, nearly lost all my money.
And was it because of that, changing gender?
Largely,
you lost your business?
Largely.
Wow.
Well, it was in part because I was having a nervous breakdown. Right. It'd be easy just to blame it on society's attitude and say, oh, poor me, I'm a terrible victim. I'm not saying that. But clients that I'd had for years, one of them said to me, look, you've done great work, but we think it's time for a change, which I thought was the ultimate irony. And he said to me on the phone, he said, look, we just can't have our brand associated with somebody like you.
Wow.
Well, it'd be very different now, wouldn't it? Now people go, oh, good, I tick a box.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Where's
They did for a while.
That diversity box?
We say that for a while, but diversity is now
full circle, of course.
Yeah, we are. Yeah. Suddenly diversity is kind of like
we're all,
persona non grata, isn't it?
As we speak today, I don't know what date this is going out, President of the United States, without any evidence, has blamed an aircraft crashing on diversity.
I saw that.
I mean, he has no reason to know that that's true.
It's just finding some random thing.
Maniacal. I mean, that's extraordinary, isn't it?
Well, it's like pointing the finger in the wrong direction.
He was more talking about race, I think.
Right.
But you know, having all these diversity programs and squeezing somebody in who's not right for the job.
Yeah.
And you'd thought we'd have moved on from that, wouldn't you?
Although that does seem that there's been a bit of a kickback around gender identity discussions, hasn't there?
A bit of a kickback, honest.
Massive.
Yeah, I mean,
but have you noticed that there was a period of more acceptance and then it's got worse again?
Yeah, I think, in fact, the way I describe it was, in the 1980s, I was described as being weird.
Right.
Now, apparently,
you're weird anyway, though, aren't you?
Of course.
Yeah.
One of the keys to succeeding in life apparently is to be a bit strange. So I tick that box.
Excellent.
But But and now apparently I'm some kind of threat.
In what? For what?
Well, I'm a threat.
Oh, you
for
might be a rapist or something.
women's spaces
Yeah.
and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But listen, I'm okay.
Yeah.
I've grown up, you know. I can take care of myself.
Yeah.
It's young people I feel sorry for.
Yeah.
It's
And you were saying young people in America.
Very
particularly.
difficult.
Yeah.
In America now, you can't get any treatment at all till you're 18. It's pretty much like that here.
And you can't even travel to America now.
Well, I can, but insurance is an issue. Because in certain states of America, this applies to all LGBT people, by the way.
Oh, right.
In some states, and it could well end up being across the board, if your lifestyle doesn't fit in with somebody's religious belief, they can refuse to treat you. So much for the Hippocratic Oath. Now, whether they would actually do that or not, but it does mean that it becomes a bit of an issue for getting travel insurance, for example.
And as you say, this isn't even a lifestyle choice, so this is just who you are.
No.
And of course, you're so much more than your gender, which I think it's really important that we do talk about that here today, because you must find yourself having to discuss this particular aspect of your identity a lot. And what about the rest?
Ad nauseum, really. And I don't mind talking to you about it, because I know we're going to talk about other things as well, because I've fought for a long time. I don't want it to define who I am.
Yes.
It clearly defines a huge part of me and my journey. And I've learnt what I've learnt because of it. So in a sense, it's been a gift, because I've had to dig really deep to understand myself and question myself. And really look into what is it that defines somebody. When I had a business that I had to liquidate, which is the one we touched on just now, and I was in the travel business. It was very different to what I do now, and I was unemployable in that sector. I went from being the chair of the trade association to suddenly being everyone wanting to put garlic around my neck and hold up a cross, and. I mean, I don't want to get the violins out, but that's the way it was.
It must have been very hurtful, though,
well,
nevertheless.
It was, kind of. Well, I knew it was going to be hard. I mean, you don't sort of wake up thinking, oh, that sounds like a good idea. I think that'd be all right. Might be one or two people that don't like it, but it'll be fine. But I went, and I did a chat show on Radio 5, I think it was, years ago now. And I was talking about this to a degree. I don't do it anymore. I got sick of it because I got fed up with trying to justify my existence. And somebody phoned in and said to the person, it was a late night Friday night, so they're going to have a drink, aren't they, people that phone in? Yeah. And this guy said, you're expert then, I assume referring to me. What are they? Not who are they? And they were going to answer for me, and I sort of put my hand out and stopped them, and I said, I'm a Homo sapien. And the response was, there you are, I knew it'd be something weird.
That's quite good.
So that kind of, for me, summed it up. I just looked at them, I rest my case,
Yeah.
I mean, you can't have a discussion with somebody who is that stupid. I mean, really.
No. But you're not trying to convince everybody of anything. I don't care.
I mean, look, leave me alone. I'm fine, I don't care what other people think of me.
Yeah.
To a degree. I mean, nobody wants to be disliked, do they? I'm not to sit here saying I'm totally impervious to everything I hear. But that's part of what I help people with when I coach at a different level. It's not about, I don't coach people around gender, but it's about who are you really, and what's the scary bit that's stopping you really live your life's purpose. We're not here for that long. Make a difference and then depart, Don't water it down and just do something to earn a bit of a living. What's the bit that is really scary? And I help people peel those layers off.
Because you have... done something that's really scary in the name of who you truly are.
Yeah, and it was only after that journey I realised what a value it had been. I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah, what did it teach you?
Well, it taught me that we're all, I'm going to say something that's a bit mushy.
Go on.
But I genuinely believe everybody's born with genius within them. I really believe that. When you think at the end of this decade there's going to be something like 8.5 billion people on the planet, and yet there's only one Deborah. There's only one me. No one else is like me. No one else is like you.
I mean, there are a few other Deborahs, but I'm the...
but not with
particular,
your mind and what you bring to the party. And everyone's got that. But how many people really shine a light on it? How many people can actually stand up and think, that's what I'm really good at, rather than doing what I think I can manage?
What I'll be accepted for.
So I always say, I do a weekend program. I'm not plugging it, so I haven't got any dates, folks. You'll be pleased to know. But it's about, I love Simon Sinek. He talks about the power of why, and he says, start with why. I think that's wrong. Because I think until you know who you are, until you start with who and own who, you'll pick the wrong why, because you'll pick a why that feels doable.
So it's not start with why.
Start with who.
Start with
and
who.
then why. Otherwise, you pick the wrong why. And I did that lots of times. You know. I wanted to be a stand-up comic. Did it for 8 years. But it wasn't really my destiny.
But was it such
probably
a bad
because I wasn't
thing?
good enough.
Well,
whatever.
You're pretty good. I mean,
but I learned a lot about it.
You a show off Broadway? What did you do?
I did Edinburgh about 5 times. The festival. And the last show that I did, I called it Britishness because there was all this stuff about what it is to be British. And a promoter from New York saw the show and he invited me to go over, and then I did an off-Broadway run. And I did 3 nights in Rome on the way, which was really cool. And it was about this notion of what is identity. Because when it came down to it, I did this thing that was about a 4-minute rant, and I went through the whole monarchy, right back from William the Conqueror to the present day. And, basically explored the fact that we've been conquered so many times. We've got French in us, we've got Italian in us, we've got German in us, we've got Scandinavian in us, we've got everything. We're mongrels, really.
That's what being British is.
So what point do you draw a line and say, it's a bit like a balance sheet, on any given day it's going to be slightly different?
Yeah.
So what is identity? And the truth is, only you know yours. At 2 o'clock in the morning when you wake up, you know what it is.
What do you mean by that?
It's what should I be doing? Is doing what I'm doing now what I should be doing?
So is your identity what you choose to do?
I think identity is made up of DNA, of course, and our upbringing shapes our attitudes to life. But I think we've all got, it sounds a bit spiritual, but we've all got a purpose. Because your gifts are unique to you. Only you can do some of the things that you do. Only I can do. And everyone listening to this will have something in them that they can do uniquely well, or that they know about. And it may be as a result of life experience. How many people do you know who've had terrible loss in their lives, and they channel that pain and they do something amazing with it?
But having the courage to step onto your path is just extraordinary. I think sometimes
it is.
Obviously
It's the hardest thing. Existentialists will tell us that our greatest fear is always linked to death, and it's no coincidence when comics say dying on stage is because that's what it feels like. It's that bad,
Because you've been so badly rejected.
Well, I think you have the propensity when you speak. I know you do speaking, as I do, not comedy, but speaking at conferences and so on. In one hit, you can be rejected and you can fail.
And those are the 2 biggest fears that we've got.
You combine it. That's why they call it dying on stage, because it feels like death. If you're rejected by everybody and you fail at everything, what else is there?
Yeah.
And that's a kind of mini snapshot.
I mean, we need to be accepted and to belong by the group for our very survival, as a species.
And that's the thing, isn't it? We take us back to animals. If you're outside the group, you don't survive.
Yeah.
That's why it's so scary.
And we're particularly useless outside of the group as an animal.
Oh, listen, we can't even fix global warming. We're talking about going to Mars. We shouldn't be allowed to go if we can't even look after our own planet. It's ludicrous. When you think of it as a species, in that respect, we're pretty pathetic as a group.
Yeah. But we do need to belong, but obviously we need leadership. I mean, that's
we need to belong to survive to something. But my point is, we can create our own belong. We can be at the centre of something and attract people to it. It's like a movement, really.
Well, I also wonder whether in stepping into our genius or our true identity, whether we don't always know exactly what that looks like. Sometimes it's a lot of little steps in the
and
right
it takes
directions.
time to figure it out.
You can't just always say, it's not always just like one thing, like coming out might be for somebody.
Which is why I love doing that with people and helping them. They've got to do it, but I can help with the steps. So
can you talk about a couple of other examples of, without naming any of your clients' names, but the types of transformations that some of these people have had?
I think the transformation's internal. I don't change anybody. They don't really change themselves. The best quote I can give you that sums it up, there's a philosopher called Arnold Beiser, and he came up with what became known as the paradoxical theory of change. It's a tenet of Gestalt therapy that I studied. And I paraphrase it a bit, but essentially he said you cannot change to become who you're not. You can only change to become who you already are. In other words, if you try and be something else, which a lot of people do for their whole lives, including me up to not that many years ago, then we're not really, it never works. And people go through their lives not fulfilling their potential because they're just too afraid or don't have the wherewithal to step into it and say, yes, this is me. I mean, the great leaders never did anything easy, you know.
So it takes real self-leadership to say, the group might not like this, the people around me.
This is my truth.
This is who I am, and this is what I've got to do.
That's all we've got when it comes down to it.
It's like, have you read The Way of Integrity by Martha Beck?
I have.
Yeah, it's that kind of idea.
She's just written a new book as well, which I'll give her a free plug.
Oh, yeah?
Probably worth buying. I'm not sure what it's called, but if you Google it and find it. But.
Well, I mean, I really like that idea that she has around just telling a truth, because sometimes we might not know what that
we
true way
distort
is.
it, you see.
Yeah.
Because we do what's safe.
Because she discovered it step by step, whereas you might have already known, at least as far as gender goes, you already had that knowledge, but
that's
some
just
people don't.
All gender is the spacesuit I walk about in. It's not,
you
know, the real me and the real you, whatever your spiritual beliefs might be, is something bigger than that. There's a core there somewhere.
Yeah.
And
I'm on the same page as you. I mean, I'm very much, I always think of this as an earth suit, and who we truly are. We just find ourselves in a body, in a set of circumstances.
I changed my spacesuit, basically. Now we're getting really wacky.
Your earth suit.
Yeah, no, but really, that was, that's it.
Yeah.
Because we are psychosomatic. We're product of our mind and body. And, I think the one law that I live by is I try not to do anything that harms anyone.
And you're not doing any harm to anyone, so why is there such why
it feels threatening.
Why is it threatening though?
Because it's the core of who we are. And when somebody comes along and says, actually, I don't fit that, they can't cope with it.
But why do people find that?
Because it's scary. Because there might be something in them that doesn't
waiting
mean that
to
they
come
want,
out.
No, not that they're going to do that, but there's something in them that says, hang on a minute, you're shaking something that's a fundamental belief. I can't handle that.
So this person's living by their truth, and that's rubbing up against me because I know that I'm not living honestly and authentically by my truth.
Whilst we're on quotes, I think it was Gandhi who said, my idea of hell is to die and meet the person I could have been.
I know. And just to even look back at the life you could have lived.
Yeah.
I was thinking that the other night when I was lying in bed thinking I meant to actually live in this lovely beach house, actually.
Yeah, well, maybe
rolling waves.
So go for it.
I know. I'm still working on that one.
I think boxers have got a great expression, haven't they? They say, as long as I know I've left it all in the ring.
Yeah.
You can't do any more than that, can you?
Yeah, that's right.
Because, and in my experience, that's when people step up and help you.
Yeah. What, when they see that you're endeavouring?
When they see you, you're out there.
Honest endeavour. Yeah.
I know you want to ask me about that court case, and that's what happened then.
Right, God.
I got when I took the government to challenge them in law, and
because what?
Well, God, we go back to gender again, I'm afraid. But I I wanted to get legal recognition.
I think what we're talking about here is actually integrity, because I know
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
heard the story, but it's about you knew what was right for you.
Well, exactly.
Go on,
I'm married with a partner who accepted me. Got 2 wonderful children. I've now got grandchildren. All love me, all accept me, and I wanted to just get legal recognition as a female. That's all. And there's an act.
And you couldn't stay married.
There's a thing called the Gender Recognition Act,
Right.
and essentially it was designed for initially was so trans people who changed gender could marry in their required gender if they wanted. That was the original.
Was that
design.
because same-sex marriage wasn't legal
Exactly
at that time?
Yeah,
and
at that time, because it wouldn't apply now, I had to not just divorce but annul my marriage. I wasn't prepared to do that.
No, because you made a vow.
Yeah, I mean it was. During the process, it actually, nothing to do with me, changed to divorce anyway. It was about getting legal recognition for social security, pensions, all that sort of stuff. So we started off and I went to a tribunal, and because I'd applied and I knew I'd get rejected, but I went through the motion. And then they said, you can go to a tribunal to appeal. So I did. And at the tribunal, they said, look, you can't win this, so the answer's no. And at that point I wanted to go further, so I went to a pro bono unit in London at Chancery Lane, and I registered to see if a pro bono lawyer might take it on, because I didn't have any money to fight it. And I got this email from somebody, lovely woman called Kerry, and she said, would you like to come and meet me? So I went up to the chambers and we had a meeting, and she said, well look, I'll take it on. Great. So we went to the upper tribunal and we lost, and they said, look, the only place you can go from here is to the High Court, but there's no point because you'll lose. So,
what was it that you were saying?
I was saying I shouldn't be defined by a gender recognition certificate.
The certificate.
You won't give me that, but that shouldn't decree, because it wasn't designed for anything more initially, so that people could get an identity, they could marry, and it gave protection at work as well.
Right, but why didn't you want one?
Well, I didn't want to dissolve the marriage.
Oh yeah.
So I didn't want. So I thought, no, I'm not doing that. Anyway, and we then got the same thing each time. It gets boring if I take you through each stage, because it took 11 years, the whole process.
And you must have been exhausted anyway, because.
But you don't know it's going to be 11 years when you begin, do you? It's another life lesson.
But you obviously cared about this massively. You didn't want to just.
Well, I've got this family that were everything to me, and I thought, I'm going to tell my children that, the marriage was dissolved. I'm not going to do that.
No.
So, and then she said, look, this is getting too much. But 2 solicitors came on board. And they were all working for nothing, these people. And then we lost there, and the same thing. We won't refuse Grant to go to the Court of Appeal, but it's pointless, so we did. And then I'm not going to name him, but the biggest barrister in the land came on board. Wow. I mean, top lawyer.
Pro bono.
Yeah. And this person's been on TV, and
you'd obviously really cared about this.
We just thought it was something worth fighting for, you see.
Amazing.
Which was great. And
that must have restored faith in humanity.
Yeah. So I thought, again, we're leaving it all in the ring. So we went to lost at the Court of Appeal and went to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court was made up of 5 judges. It's an odd number for a fairly obvious reason. But they said, look, because this impacts the law, we're going to get opinion from the European Court. Right. Note the word opinion. All this stuff about being dictated to by Europe, because we were in the European Union at the time.
Yeah.
So anyway, ended up going to Luxembourg. I went because I wasn't speaking, but I thought, well, I'll go. They're all doing this for nothing. They wouldn't even let me buy them lunch, these lawyers.
Wow. I
mean, how amazing is that? Yeah. It's very humbling.
Yeah.
And then a year later, we got the judgment, and it went back to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled in our favour.
Fantastic.
And it became binding in 17 European countries.
It must have felt like such a vindication for you that your morals and your values and your vows and your marriage and to your family and everything,
I've got a secret to share with you.
Go on.
I'm just bloody minded. I didn't want to lose.
Well, maybe that's the case.
No, I mean, it's a bit of both, really. I'm not going to be all pious about it and say I was trying to change lives. But I just, the more it went on, the more determined you get, really. Because you think, well, I can't quit
Got that
now.
far,
Gone this far.
Reminds me of the post. Have you seen the post office, Mr. Bates?
Oh yeah,
and
well, God, that's what an appalling miscarriage.
Yeah,
and they still haven't got their money.
No, I know.
I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable. Well, it's not unbelievable to me because I've seen how the system works. Do you ever read Bleak House by Dickens?
I haven't read it.
It's about in Chancery where everyone's shuffling papers.
Oh,
so even in Victorian times,
they were depicted.
It took forever.
Yeah. Well, I just come back to what you were saying about doing your comedy bit.
Yeah. That was for me to find a voice.
Well, so you found your voice. That's what I was going to say, is that you said it wasn't for you and it wasn't your destiny, but actually maybe it was part of your destiny.
It was. I loved it at the time.
Yeah. So what did you get from that period? You found your voice.
I learned how to be on stage and survive,
Right. Did you die ever?
I've absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And
so you learned how to die.
Well,
and come back to life
in fact, I didn't learn how to die. That
stage.
happens for you.
Yeah.
But actually, what happened was, I did this gig, and the second one was a much bigger one, and that's when there was tumbleweed blowing past the stage, and comics have got a great expression. I walked off to the sound of my own feet, and I got into the car, I burst into tears. I felt totally humiliated,
Yeah.
I didn't get a single laugh. It was
Wow.
dreadful. And of course, you get worse as it goes on
Yeah,
at that
yeah.
stage because I hadn't learned how to do it.
Yeah.
So I went into the course and...
Who was that with?
Um,
Amused Moose?
no, it was somebody called Jill Edwards who's trained a lot of top comics.
Yeah.
And it just gives you the framework to go out there and do it,
Right.
And then you've got to do it yourself.
Yeah.
And then one thing led to another, did Edinburgh, blah, blah, blah. And...
So what did it give you to apart from discovering that when you died on stage,
you don't literally die.
You don't literally die. Was that a useful thing to discover?
No, I kind of knew that anyway. I think. I think what it was for me was.
But it's facing the worst, isn't it? You
yeah,
face the worst,
and it's
then,
challenging yourself.
Yeah.
Because each time, you could do the same 20 minutes, and it'll be very different on a Wednesday from a Tuesday.
Yeah. I find that even with speaking. I mean, I'm not doing comedy, but just the same material is completely different.
And what
with
you
different
do
audiences.
learn is how to change the room a bit when it's going badly. It takes a long time to do that, but you get to a point where you sort of think, actually, hang on, I've got to go into the room. I've got to start talking to someone. I've got to lift the energy.
So you learn to put yourself out there and
to do something to change the energy.
Yeah, because sometimes it's like I feel like this isn't in comedy, but in speaking, it's like I'm giving everything. I'm just going like, come on, I'm giving you every ounce of my energy.
But the one thing you learn from being a therapist is it's never the client's fault.
Yeah.
If you're struggling, you've got to look into yourself and say, what am I not doing?
Yeah. How can I adapt?
doing?
How can I change?
It's very easy to blame you hear people, don't you? Oh, that audience was terrible.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you just didn't hit the spot for whatever reason that day.
Yeah.
So how are you going to learn from that? If you read, I was very inspired by Joan Rivers. She used to go trundling around Greenwich Village with a box recording her gigs, dying and dying and dying until eventually she turned it round.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and she wrote a book called Enter Talking, I think. It's very inspiring for any woman who wants to be a performer of any description, because she was anything but an overnight success. I mean,
was she? I'll have a read, because she's got a really sharp, dry wit, hasn't she?
I met her once.
Did you?
And she's very different off stage.
Yeah.
Much smaller than, I mean, you kind of know she's not tall, but much smaller, but it's very funny off stage as well as on. I was very sad when she died.
So I remember you, I've seen you come on stage a few years back, and you had a little bit of a good opening line. What was it you used to say as you walked on?
I can't remember.
Okay, but it was something, I mean, it's one of these things that comedians do where you claim, back to Perfectly Flawed, you claim the flaws, you claim the thing that people are kind of noticing about you.
Oh, yeah, you got to own who you are.
So how do you do that, and why?
Different ways, really. I can't remember. It was probably something
about Madonna. I think there was a bit of a Madonna thing in it. Is that right?
I remember when I first started, I'd say things like, I don't know what you're thinking, that Kate Moss has let herself go, or something like that. And I forget what it was really. But, because, I've got a deep voice as well. There was a question, if people are sitting there wondering about you, then you're not going to connect with them. That's the short
So
answer.
what you need to get that covered and out of the way.
You've got to deal with it. If you're tall, you deal with it. If you're short, you deal with it. Whatever it might be. Yeah. You in some way need to connect with it. Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to take all the energy into the wrong place. Yeah. Another reason for being yourself.
Yeah, yeah. But it's scary, isn't it? Because it's the one thing you probably don't want to draw attention to.
It is, yeah.
You don't want to draw attention. I remember I did a little bit of stand-up comedy. I mean, 3 or 4 times, 5-minute gigs in a pub. So, like really low-level stuff.
That's where everyone starts.
It was the most horrific thing I've ever done. It really is, terrifying. So
the person that's good at telling jokes in the pub's not necessarily good at being behind a microphone.
But the one thing I thought to myself, what is it I don't want people to see in me? And I thought, they're going to think I'm a bit posh for this rough pub.
But so you could deal with that.
So I didn't want to draw attention to it. So I said something like, I know you think I'm a bit posh. In fact, my full name is Deborah Henley Royal Regatta, but you should meet my sister. I can't really remember.
Yeah, but that's, however you did it, name. I don't know. Yeah. But that's a good way to do it.
But it's exactly the thing I didn't want people to see in me, and I think that in a way is what Perfectly Flawed, to my mind, is really about. It's the very thing that we our shadow, or the thing that we struggle to embrace.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's it. And it's very exposing when you're on a platform, whether you're speaking or whatever you're doing. Yeah. Because you're up there saying, look, please listen to me, essentially. And they're all going, well, tell me something interesting.
And all eyes are on you, and they can judge you. They can sit there going, I wouldn't wear shoes like that. Or they can do whatever, they can be thinking whatever they like. And we just have to say, well, for me, it's kind of like, well, this isn't about me, it's about them, it's their projection. But it's easier said than done. I don't know what's your philosophy on it? When you've got people judging?
I think have enough faith in yourself just to say, I know what I'm doing. Or if you don't, own that you're learning, one or the other, but don't let them define that is you. Yeah. Because mostly, look, what sort of person heckles you in a violent way or nasty way? They're not nice.
It's
why would
totally
they do that?
Stuff.
It says more about them.
Yeah.
Because why would you do that? So you need to just hold on. I remember the most difficult one I had, I think. I was at, I better not say the name of the club, it was a big club. And I got introduced, and as I walked out, it was very quiet because it was a long walk to the microphone, and a voice from the back yelled, flip off your... Imagine what they really said. And then I sort of thought about it in an instant. I hadn't said anything. And I could see the audience kind of going, well, hang on a minute, give her a break. I haven't even spoken yet. So I just looked at the front row and I said, I must apologise, my beautician's in tonight. So I'm dealing with the fact that I'm not a supermodel. Yeah. And I'm saying, it wasn't essentially funny, but the audience went, oh, sigh of relief, she can handle it. Yeah. That's what they want to know. It's not so much that you have to be very funny, but you've got to deal with it. And I've seen Billy Connolly just swear at somebody, to get rid of them. Right. It wasn't particularly funny, but he owns the place. He's brilliant. As are a lot of top comics. They own it because they know what to do. And good speakers own it because they've got faith in what they're talking about. And if I'm coaching somebody and I'm helping them to be authentic, be who they are, whatever you want to do, how can I do it if I haven't been on that journey?
Totally.
Because I couldn't do it. Yeah. I wouldn't know how to do it.
I mean, that relief that we feel when someone can handle whatever's going on stage, because we're in their hands. Yeah. And as soon as we feel they can't handle it, we opt out.
Partly that's why people get booed off, because the pain in the audience is so great, they want to end it.
It is painful, isn't it? It's painful when
they want to finish it for them. You know?
But as you say, you linked it from comedy into speaking, where if people can't handle it on stage and you're not in good hands, the audience is just going to opt out. They're not going to be part of it.
In a way, a good shop assistant is on a platform.
Right.
Because they're out there and the public are coming to them. How do they deal with it? They're going to get some people who are nice. They're going to get some people who are a bit rude. You have to figure out how to work with that. And if you're going to get a rude customer, you've got to hold your nerve, haven't you? Because if you swear at them, you're going to lose your job. But you don't have to fully own what they're saying. I remember I was at a convention in Mexico, and it was a big hotel, and they had different restaurants, and I used to go. I got to know the chef, and I love chili and stuff, so I was eating Mexican omelets, which an omelette with lots of hot stuff in it. And I'm in the queue one day, and there's this woman, and it was quite cloudy, being cloudy, and it turned out she's from Atlanta. Apologies to anyone who lives in Atlanta. And she was moaning about the weather. I ate it here, she said, blah, blah, blah. And the guy's getting paid. What would you like? I'll have what they're having, points to my dish, which was this Mexican omelette. And she said, I really hate this place because I ain't even got burnt yet. So he winks at me, and in Spanish, she's throwing chilies in Spanish. She said, she no get burnt on the outside, but she's sure as hell going to get burnt on the inside. And that, for me, summed up how to handle, you can't spit back. Yeah. He would have probably been fired. Yeah. But he found a way
to get back.
Of saying, hang on a minute, you're not treating me like that. There's a cost.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought it was brilliant. I wish I'd taken his name. I'd brought him onto a seminar,
Yeah, I mean, we never quite know kind of what power people are weaving. But I mean, in a way, I'm just going to take it onto a slightly different track, because it's something that you were saying there with your own clients. Yeah. And take it further from, you were talking about how we've got to own it. We've got to own this stuff, and the relief we get when the person on stage
being real.
Is being real.
It's so nice just to.
But it's not just owning. It's not just owning or commanding the space. There's such a relief when we meet somebody who has a flaw of something a bit different, something a bit. It's not a flaw, because that's why it's perfectly flawed. It's perfect. But somebody has something a bit different, and some people feel they've found their ease with it, whereas somebody else might be very touchy and uncomfortable. And if they're not at peace with whatever that imperfection
Some people find it early in life, others find it later, but it doesn't matter as long as you find it.
We've got to find our peace with ourselves, haven't we?
We're only alive now, aren't we?
We are. That's all.
Yesterday's history, tomorrow's maybe. So just accept it's a journey sometimes, and it can be frustrating, but don't lose faith, because if you're doing nothing else, you're trying to do something, so you learn from it.
So is that what authenticity is, do you think?
I think it probably is, yeah.
Acceptance of who we truly are.
Yeah, and finding, allowing ourselves to find it, be it, finding what's preventing us. It's a shell that we put on to keep us safe, because the brain will do anything to avoid pain. So if it thinks we get a reminder that we were rejected for laughing when we were a child, and then every time we go to laugh, it pulls us back. It's just basic, silly example maybe, but so we learn it. We learn I can keep safe if I'm quiet. How many girls learn little girls should be seen and not heard? I mean, hopefully that's changed a lot. I remember my eldest sister, her aspiration was to be a private secretary. Girls were taught they would be nurses or something, rather than there's nothing wrong with being a nurse. Yeah. But
that was the aspiration.
They weren't told to be an astronaut or be a surgeon.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, they are now, but they weren't then.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even when I came back from university with a first-class degree, and I told my father, he said, oh, well done. And then a bit later he said, you might want to sign up for a secretarial, because it might be a few years till you get married. So it's like, I've just taken this, I've worked really hard on psychology and art and got my degree, and then that was the route.
So
to
the
go and get
fact
married.
you're telling me has had an impact on you. You'd have
has,
forgotten
because
it. Of course.
Yeah, because I thought,
How
well,
would
I
it
wasn't
not?
allowed to spread
No.
my wings. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not putting my dad down. I think that was his way of seeing the world, but it's more for me. I had all these ambitions and desires and little dreamlets.
Yeah.
You know, just
Someone's
newly hatched.
popping your balloon.
And it's
But
like,
it
no,
was wrong.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that we have to put him up against the wall and shoot him. But what he said was wrong. And when you can say, look, I love you, but you're wrong, then you can leave it behind.
Yeah.
It's hard, though.
Yeah, but I think what's also important is to ensure that those little dreams, those little bubbles that are starting to form, you as a young person, you do start to say, oh, pay attention to it. What does it say?
You do, and you don't even know you're doing it.
Yeah.
But you just do it instinctively.
And I've got a new philosophy, which is I start to act when I have that little inkling now.
Yeah.
Like I fancy doing that. I fancy doing this podcast. I was walking past, I saw this great studio. Oh yeah, I've had an idea for a podcast.
Yeah.
I'll sign up now and do it.
You could have
Yeah.
subconsciously gone, oh, that's a bit scary, and just walked on.
Yeah.
But you didn't.
Well,
So you've got the awareness.
yeah, to own my my dreams.
That's the first
really.
stage, to be aware of it. You can't change anything if you're not aware of it.
Yeah. So is that really what you're helping the people that you coach to do?
Partly, in part. And I like to think what I bring to the feast is that, as well as, you know, the people use that definition that coaching's looking forward and therapy's learning backward. Well, neither are exclusively true, because you do a bit of both. But I don't look back with people, but if I can see that there's a block, I may offer to work on that with them as well, separately. We may just do a session, bit of hypnosis or something, whatever. Because until that's got rid of, you're dragging it around. It's like trying to run 100 metres towing a block of concrete. You can still do the 100 metres, but you're going to take a lot longer.
So we've been doing a fair bit of looking back, and I'm sure you've dealt with overcoming blocks. But what about for the future? What does the future for Shelley hold?
Well, I'm determined to extend what I do to groups of people, and I'm going to be doing a weekend seminar to begin with later in the year. And
what's the main theme of that?
It'll be around purpose and going from good to great, really, by really making sure you're owning all your strengths and getting rid of things.
And starting with who, presumably.
Starting with who, and then going to why.
A lot of who.
I've got a model of who, why, what we do, and then ultimately, who are we serving? Because that's the only thing we haven't talked about.
That's true.
If we're not serving somebody or people, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Otherwise, just ego.
Back to belonging, back to being part of a social group. We're human animals within this group and this network. So we need to, I guess, discover our individuality, honour that, so that we can then serve.
And one of the things I'm passionate about is girls and education in the third world.
Right.
You know, I mean, there are countries, as you know, and we all know now, where girls don't even get an education because they're not important enough.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a crime.
Yeah.
And yet we turn a blind eye to it. We abandoned Afghanistan, for example.
Yeah.
I know there were political reasons for doing it, and then we believed what we knew wouldn't happen, all these assurances that girls would be educated, and it's just dreadful. And it's not just there, it's everywhere, and that's a crime against humanity.
Yeah. We are human beings, and we still owe it to the rest of the world, even if we've still got our own problems in our own backyard.
Of course.
And we've talked about some of the political changes recently, which I'm sure affecting you more directly, but also there's human beings.
And ultimately, what you're doing is you're denying that resource for all those unique people. You're denying their gifts being used in the world. One of those kids has probably got the ability to fix getting rid of plastic in the ocean, or what, I don't know.
Yeah.
But something.
Yeah.
But that's fear. What happens if we let them have an education?
Yeah.
Oh my God, they might get strong.
Yeah.
They might get powerful.
The girls might be quite good.
They might be intelligent. We can't have that.
So tell me, Shelley, what advice would you have given to the younger you?
I'd live in the now more, because I was forever planning, and I think it's good to plan, but you also have to live. And I had a health scare a couple of years ago. We don't need to go into it. And it made me focus a lot more. Suddenly realised I wasn't immortal. And I would live in the now more. I think I spent too long planning forward, passing exams, you know, constantly. I've got to have more, I've got to have more. And suddenly I realised that, you know, it's all in here now. How many more courses do I need to do? How many more qualifications do I need? When actually
you're good enough
I'm not
as you
perfect, but I am perfectly flawed.
I like it.
Yeah, no, really. And you know, we're never going to be enough, are we? Because there's always more knowledge that we could do with. But at some point, you have to say, well, I know enough to at least do something meaningful, and I'll keep on learning as well. I owe that to myself and the people I work with. But if I wait until I'm ready, I'll be dead, you know.
And I think there's something, you know, I think there's probably a bit more that you have to say around helping people make their difference in the world to other people and serving other people, because as you say, that we didn't talk about that too much. But what is it that's required to enable people to get into that service mindset? Because I sometimes wonder whether that's something that comes with age as well.
I think partly what happens is that fear is the thing that prevents us, because we're all driven in the West, particularly with having to earn money.
Look after number one or your own family.
I've got to do that. How am I going to earn some money? How am I going to get some money? When you actually serve people, it comes back anyway.
Yeah. So we have to look after our society's built around being quite transactional and looking after ourselves.
Well, we need to look after ourselves to the point where we can be as good as we can be.
Yeah.
But unless we're doing that because we feel we want to make a difference and help other people, it will always just be a selfish pursuit. Whereas, people who are called to be doctors, they don't do it for the money. They would find something else to do. I mean, I know they get well paid at a high level, but they feel that they want to heal people. They want to put it right.
Oh, they go through years of challenge to get to those high salaries, doctors.
Well, you've got to do 5 years at university, haven't you?
And then the houseman working all
whatever
crazy hours. Or
and when we could go on and on, with nursing and so on.
Yeah, teachers. Badly.
We value the wrong things, don't we?
We do.
But I think that's getting better. I think proper entrepreneurship is about serving.
Yeah.
And having this buzz that we've got to do something. The money comes. It's quite interesting, really, that when we stop focusing on the pounds and the pence, we get enough. It's there.
That's a big act of faith, though. I mean, I think for somebody who's I'm married to somebody in financial services, so very much a transactional mindset.
It's important to look after it.
Yeah.
But if it's your God, you're going to be very empty.
Yeah.
And by the way, we all know, don't we, that the money's not evil. It's the love of it that was talked about as being evil. But I think it's fear that makes people hoard.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about fear. Yeah. What does perfectly flawed mean to you?
It means owning my flaws, doing what I can to improve them and not let them hold me back, but accepting that I've got them. And what too many of us do, and I was like this, we try and tell the world we're not flawed.
Right.
It's bullshit. We're all flawed. If we're flawed to the point where we're harming people, then we need to do something about that. And if we're flawed to the point where we're not harming but we're not doing anything for people, we need to look at that as well.
Right.
Otherwise, why are we here?
So is it that we need to be able to accept our flaws and stop hiding them for the rest of the world?
Yeah, we don't have to share them all, but we need to stop hiding them from ourselves. That's the biggest thing. And we try and keep convincing ourselves that I'm okay, and this thing that I've got that I don't tell anyone about, you know, unhealthy, whatever, then we damage ourselves, and then we damage other people as well.
I mean, it's like in addiction recovery, they say you're only as sick as your secrets.
Yeah.
And if there are secrets from ourselves.
Yeah. And one of the biggest things they do when you join AA or NA for drugs is own it. Because until you own it, you can't deal with it. And they, you know,
Step one.
You do it within a group.
Yeah.
And the one thing I learned from the European court thing, because I had this experience where I was on my own with 4 lawyers on one side of the court, and on the other side of the court was 100 or 200 people, whatever it was. And all sorts of derogatory terms were used to describe me by the opposition and everything. And I could feel the eyes all looking at me. So I would look across and smile.
Yeah.
And I realised in that moment that shame needs the oxygen of secrecy. And I took that oxygen away by saying, okay, yeah, that's right.
Say that if you like, but
you got nothing to be ashamed of after that, because it's not there.
Fantastic. Well, Shelley, being shameless and being you, it's been such a pleasure to have you here today.
It's been great talking to you.
Thank you very much for coming along. What struck me in that episode was the sheer bravery that Shelley showed in just recognising the truth of who she was and taking action to be that, to go out into the world in a very visible way and really being true to herself. It shows real integrity and also a huge amount of courage. But also, I think it brings that idea to each of us to say, who am I really? And am I really having courage and confidence to go out and be that person in the world? Or am I still hiding things? Next time, we speak to Beth Sherman, a 7 times Emmy Award winner in comedy, about how she also learns to embrace her flaws on the stage, whether she's speaking and doing comedy or in writing, because often it can be that very thing that we're most embarrassed or ashamed about that can have the most comic value, and we have to embrace it. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure that you like it and you leave a review. It makes such a difference to us. And also share it with anyone else who you think could benefit from listening to this episode. Also, make sure that you subscribe, because that way you won't miss out on any future episodes. And we've got some really great ones coming up, as well as some fantastic ones in our back catalogue.